It all started when Akira Tsubaki's class had a new transfer student, Mikito Yarabi. The moment she stepped into the room, instantly seemed to already exude a certain level of oddness with her jerky movements and her bangs covering half of her face. She was assigned to sit next to him, and Tsubaki did his best to be accommodating, offering his help if she needed any. However, from the very first day, Yarabi was labeled as a weirdo. When lunchtime came, she immediately fell asleep face first on her desk. When a bunch of girls approached her to get to know her, she refused and promptly fell asleep again. Her strange behavior escalated during math period when she, out of nowhere, began laughing hysterically, claiming that it was because of something personal she can't explain. Her excuse only infuriated their teacher more. From then on, the fact that she is always asleep during breaks and that she's not really close to anyone, she gained quite a reputation as a weirdo. Little did Tsubaki know that everything would change in a single day. It was dismissal time when he noticed that Yarabi was the last person remaining in the classroom, so he woke her up. When she lifted her head up, he noticed that she was drooling, and her saliva was pooling onto her desk. He explained that it was time to go home, and so she stood up to leave. Before she could completely go, he called her attention to tell her that she still had some drool on her chin, so she wiped it up before she left. He turned back around and focused back on the pool of drool that was on the table. He allowed his intrusive thoughts to take over, and he gathered some of the saliva on his fingers and took a taste. As he was sucking on his finger, he noted that Yarabi's saliva was quite sweet. That was when he realized what exactly he was doing, and he was instantly horrified. He escaped from that room as fast as he could. At night, he dreamt about a girl who was holding his hand as they ran into a strange city. There, they danced on a roof of a hotel, clearly having a time of their lives. That girl is actually Yarabi. Since then, that dream had been in his mind for days. Several days later, Tsubaki suddenly collapsed. He had a cold and his fever was so severe that he had to stay home for days. His sister was perplexed that even though the doctor said that it was just a simple cold, his fever was still quite high. While he was still stuck in bed, his sister informed him that one of his classmates had brought him some handouts from school. However, he did not expect that classmate to be Yarabi. When she entered his room, he instantly shot up from his position out of shock. She did not even bring handouts as she had said. She made herself comfortable on his bed, and in an ominous manner, she called his name and proceeded to explain how his sickness is not an ordinary cold. He was given the shock of his life when she told him that she knew where he got it. Somehow, she knew that he licked her drool from her desk 2 weeks ago. When he did not say a word out of astonishment, she raised her hand to lower the face mask he was wearing. She ordered him to open his mouth. When he did, she raised her finger to her mouth and coated it with her saliva. She then stuck her finger in his mouth and told him to suck it. When she retracted her hand, he felt that he was feeling relatively better. His fever was gone like magic. She explained that since it was so long since he had tasted her saliva, he was going through withdrawal. The reason why he was so ill, he could not believe what he had just heard. He needed answers, so he asked her if her saliva had some chemicals or bacteria that made him addicted to it. Rather than giving him more information, she laughed at him so hard that his room shook with it. When she was done with her cackling, she explained that he was lovesick. She speculated that the moment he saw her eyes when he woke her up that faithful afternoon, he fell in love with her. And that was the reason why he reacted the way he did from tasting her drool. After giving him such life-altering information, she reminded him to go to school tomorrow and left his room. He did go to school the following day. When school ended, he was unprepared to have Yarabi waiting for him. She wanted them to walk home together. When they were about to part ways, she coated her finger with her saliva once again and ordered him to lick it. He was obviously hesitating to do so, but she warned him that he may go into withdrawal again if he didn't, so he had no choice but to comply. And that became their daily routine after school. At some point, he indeed fell in love with her. So after one of their after-school routines, he gathered as much courage as he could and confessed that he loved her, and asked her to go out with him, but she wanted him to prove it to her. He thought about kissing her, but she stopped him. She told him that she wanted something original, something only he can think of. He suddenly took out a photo from his wallet, claiming that it was a girl that he had a crush on for so long. He confesses that the moment he licked her drool, he forgot that he even had that crush. So to demonstrate his devotion to her, he ripped it up to pieces and threw it away. He declared that from then on, she is now his girlfriend. Suddenly, her mouth began overflowing with saliva, pooling onto the ground. She explained that it's what happens whenever she's happy. She then asked him if he was a virgin. When he confirmed that he was, she was relieved that they were the same. She then revealed that back then, when she suddenly laughed during class, she actually heard a voice that was telling her that Tsubaki was the person she would be having sex with for the first time. Naturally, he was astounded to hear this. He could only watch her as she made her way home. Before completely leaving, she called out to him that she was now his girlfriend. They were at school when Tsubaki decided to ask his friend Oino's opinion. He asked for advice on what to do if he hypothetically had a girlfriend. His friend contemplated for a short moment and told him that they should probably hold hands. Tsubaki thought that this idea was brilliant, so when he and Yurabi were walking back home, he tried to hold her hand. However, she jerked her hand away. When he explained his intention, she told him that there was no reason for them to hold hands. Tsubaki lamented that other than when Yurabi lets him swallow her drool every day before they part, there was no indication that they were even in a relationship whatsoever. So he sought Yuno's advice once again, and this time he told him that prior to holding hands, they must communicate first. They should talk about each other's hobbies and stuff. So he tried again to be closer to his girlfriend. Before they parted ways that day, he asked her if they could talk a little. She seemed confused, so he asked what she would like to do. Her answer surprised him though. She answered that she was good with scissors. To demonstrate this, she made him hold a piece of cloth. She then took out a pair of scissors from her panties. With lightning speed, she used the scissors to make a camellia flower, since that was what his name meant. He was pretty worried that she was flashing her underwear to a guy. However, she told him that she was okay with it as long as it was him. When she left, he figured that he could consider that as communication. Later on, he had to seek Yuno's not-so-expert advice again. He wanted to know what actually came way before communication and holding hands. Yuno, after a moment of speculation about whether or not Tsubaki actually had a girlfriend, answered that the greeting came first. He recalled that he did greet Yurabi the first time they met fairly well. However, despite all his efforts thinking about it, he was still unable to understand her. An opportunity arose when his friend gave him 2 tickets for the movie he had been wanting to watch. He considered this as an opportunity for Yurabi and him to be more like a couple. When he told Yurabi about watching it on Sunday, she told him that she had already had plans for that day. This was a blow to him, and hearing this caused him to crouch down in devastation. He asked her if he really is her boyfriend since they didn't really do anything that couples usually do. She told him that he is her boyfriend, and that his sucking on her saliva-covered finger every afternoon was a bond of their own. To prove this to him, she led him up to a temple and into an abandoned building. When they reached the creepy rooftop with broken glass and scattered wood, she made him sit on a chair. She then made him promise to keep his eyes shut until she told him to open them. She then told him that she will stick her drool-covered finger in his mouth, but this was a special drool, so he must prepare himself. When she did, there was an inexplicable increase in his heartbeat. His body felt like it was on fire, and he was so aroused for no reason. His nose even started bleeding. Meanwhile, Yurabi was suddenly wholly naked. Her clothes are haphazardly scattered all over the floor. She explained that he was feeling that way because she passed on her excitement to him through her drool, and this was only possible because he was her boyfriend. When she redressed herself, she wiped the blood from his nose and led him home. As they were walking, she told him that her heart was pounding too, in case he did not keep his promise. When he asked her what she would have done if he did not, she instantly got her scissors from her panties and aimed them at him. He was quick to use his notebook as a shield, and she used her skills to make paper people out of it as a demonstration of what she would have done to him. Good thing he honored his promise to her. That night, he had another crazy dream where he actually did the deed with Yurabi. The next day, as they were walking, Yurabi noticed him blushing. So she asked him about it, and he told her that he just remembered a dream he had. Yurabi wanted to know what it was about, but he told her it was a secret. Out of nowhere, she brought her finger into his mouth, and with her finger coated with his saliva, she sucked on it. Her nose suddenly started bleeding. Turns out, she somehow knew what he dreamt about. He was stupefied to hear this and demanded to know how she did that. But rather than answering him, she declared that it was a secret and proceeded to run away from him. Tsubaki was unable to go home with Yurabi because of day duty. When he went to a classroom, he accidentally saw his friend Yuno kissing a girl. He was so shocked, and when they noticed him by the door, they instantly separated. Apparently, Yuno and the girl, Oka, were together since the first year. They were keeping it a secret, so Yuno made him swear to tell no one about what he had witnessed. During class, he couldn't help but notice the similarities Yurabi and he had with Yuno and Oka. Like them, nobody actually knew that they were dating. The only difference was that the two were already kissing, whilst Yurabi and him are nowhere near that level. He couldn't help but start obsessing about the act of kissing. On their way home, Yurabi wanted to stop at the park. She intended to do her homework beforehand, so Tsubaki decided to do his as well. While both of them were busy, he told her about Yuno and Oka kissing when he walked in on them. At first, he was disappointed when she did not react much to him broaching such an intimate topic. He was down for a moment when all of a sudden, she asked him if he wanted to kiss her. When he confessed that he did, she took out a test tube from her bag. She asked him to hold it, and she stood up to twirl fast for several seconds. She asked for the test tube back and held it to her mouth. Letting her saliva drip into it, she then instructed him to taste it before sleeping that night. He was dumbfounded, of course, but what did it have to do with kissing? But as usual, he did as he was told. He tasted the drool when he was alone in his room that night. That night, he dreamt that he was walking side by side with Urabi. He watched her pop a piece of sweets into her mouth, and she noticed him observing her, so she offered him sweets as well. But rather than giving him a new piece like a normal person, she came up to him and planted her mouth to his, effectively transferring the candy to his mouth and popping another one into her own mouth. Naturally, Tsubaki was flabbergasted. She explained that since he was envious of Yuno kissing his girlfriend, they now have had a first kiss together. He became upset about this, passionately saying that first kisses ought to have feelings. The next day, as they were walking home once again, he told her about the weird dream he had had after tasting the drool from the test tube. She then asked him to come with her to the woods. There, she asked him if he wanted to kiss. Tsubaki instantly turned red, and he took several moments before he could answer. He then told her that they should wait until they truly understand each other's feelings before doing such a thing. She then looked up into his eyes and blushed, stating that she agreed as well. The next time they were in school, Tsubaki was thinking about how exactly they could understand each other. However, as the class was cleaning the classroom, he noticed one of his classmates looking at Urabi with interest. He even followed her when she went to take out the trash. Later on, when he was getting his daily drool, she had told him that Ogata, their classmate, asked her out. He was surprised by this and got incredibly annoyed. He learns that she told him that she will give her reply the following day, so he was determined to inform Ogata that she is his girlfriend. However, she told him not to interfere, and that this was her problem. That night, he was so frustrated that Urabi didn't just reject the guy since he was already her boyfriend. He began overthinking that she was probably choosing between the two of them, especially since Ogata was pretty popular for being on the soccer team. Next day, during lunch break, he watched as Urabi walked out of the classroom with Ogata trailing behind her. He was so infuriated that he forcefully took Oino's lunch and gobbled it up. Meanwhile, Ogata asked Urabi about her response, and she told him to close his eyes instead. He was confused for a bit, but he did it anyway. She then covered her finger with saliva and shoved it in Ogata's mouth. He was startled and asked her what she had just done. But rather than answering, she asked him if he felt anything different instead. Ogata denied that anything had changed. She then told him that he can never be her boyfriend. She walked away with a knowing smile, leaving the poor guy perplexed. Later on, she informed Tsubaki about how she rejected Ogata. He was so relieved, and he expressed how he was worried she was choosing between the two of them. Hearing this, Urabi asked him to open his mouth, and he did so without question. She shoved her saliva-covered fingers in his mouth, and after a few seconds, Tsubaki's nose started bleeding. Tsubaki panicked and asked why it was happening. She handed him the underwear she was supposed to wear that day and said that she wasn't wearing any. He was taken aback and listened as she explained that he was the only boy she had a bond with, since Ogata did not react the same way he did. He became overwhelmed when she declared that he was her boyfriend. He attempted to hug her, but she evaded him and was about to take out her scissors, only to remember that she was not wearing underwear. He simply took the scissors from her bag and gently tapped his head with them, reminding him not to grab her like that again. To Tsubaki's joy, she held his hand when they continued walking. Tsubaki noticed that Oino was smiling too much, so he wanted to find out what he was so happy about. His friend tells him that the reason he was more happy than usual was because he finally got to see his girlfriend in her summer PE uniform. His conversation with him made him start to think about Urabi in just a tight shirt and shorts as well. He was clearly ecstatic about it as well. All of a sudden, he noticed that someone had approached his sleeping girlfriend. Oka, Oino's girlfriend, asked Urabi to have lunch with her. Urabi agreed as long as she does not wake her up again, since she never eats lunch. However, when she smelled how good Oka's lunch was, she woke up once again. Oka offered that she try the food since she had a knack for cooking. Tsubaki and Oino were astonished as they watched their girlfriends interact. The rest of the class was also shocked to see the reclusive Urabi sharing food with Oka. When they were walking home, Tsubaki told Urabi that he was happy that she shared a meal with Oka, especially since she's always alone at school without any friends. She told him that she didn't need friends since she had him. She then offered him his daily dose of drool, which he happily accepted. Unbeknownst to them, someone was actually watching them. The following day, Tsubaki and Oino were on cloud 9, since the first subject of the day was PE. But their fantasies were crushed when they were instructed to do judo indoors while the girls had relay races on the tracks. Urabi was accidentally tripped by her classmate, causing her to fall to the ground. She had a nasty gash on her right knee, so Oka, as a member of the health committee, offered to take her to the nurse. When they got there, the nurse was out, so Oka had to treat Yurabi's wounds herself. When she was finished, they shared a drink that Oka kept in the clinic's fridge. Moments later, when Oka sat next to Yurabi, she told her that she wants to be her friend. However, Yurabi rejected her offer, saying that she didn't need friends. Oka accepted her decision, but she assured her that if she changed her mind, she would be there for her. As they walked away, Yurabi was shocked to see that her right knee was now bleeding as well. When she pointed this out to her, Oka was baffled. Yurabi took out a sharp cutter from a desk and slashed a small wound on her palm. She then asked Oka to put her drool-covered finger in her mouth. Oka was understandably hesitant to do this, but Yurabi demanded that she hurry. When she did as she was told, a small wound appeared on her hand as well. Yurabi explained that they also have a strong connection to one another, since she reacted this way when she drank her saliva. Oka was stunned by this, but she told Yurabi that this could be a sign that they were meant to be friends. However, she answered that they still couldn't, since she was not the only one who was bonded to her. Yurabi was shaken when Oka correctly guessed that she was talking about Tsubaki. Apparently, she saw what they were doing, but was unsure what it was. She speculated that she was giving him her drool. Yurabi eventually walked away from her and clarified that she only needed one person to have a connection with, and that she didn't need friends. She left Oka, but not before reminding her to treat her wounds properly. Later on, Yurabi forgot that she was injured, so when she gave Tsubaki her drool, he ended up with wounds on his palm and knees as well. She then had to apologize for injuring him. The next day, Oka approached Yurabi again. She was silent for a moment as she closed her eyes to concentrate. She opened her eyes. She asked Yurabi to lick her saliva-covered finger as well. Yurabi did not understand, but she did so anyway. Yurabi was taken aback that it was so sweet, the sweetest she had ever tasted. Oka was shocked to hear this, speculating that she and Tsubaki hadn't gone to first base yet. When she was silent moments ago, she was thinking about the first time she kissed her boyfriend. Since Yurabi licked her drool and found it sweet, she probably hadn't experienced kissing herself. Oka then told her that she made too much lunch and would like for them to share it. She told her that even though they couldn't be friends, they could at least get along, so they ended up having lunch together outside. The boys in their class were doing a neat trick during their soccer class. They would kick the ball far enough that it would reach the fence, and on the other side, the girls were having their swim class. When it was Tsubaki's turn, all he could think about was that he would get to see Yurabi in her swimsuit. Suddenly, he saw her through the trees as she was drying herself with a towel. He got so distracted that when he kicked the ball, he did not hit it and fell to the ground instead. He could only mourn his lost chance of seeing Yurabi in her swimsuit. As the two of them were walking home, they were eating popsicles due to the unusual heat. When they threw the popsicle sticks away, Tsubaki noticed that Yurabi was sweating. When the wind blew suddenly, he got a whiff of her scent. He realized how sweet she smelled. He leaned in closer to her, but Yurabi saw what he was doing. She instantly attempted to pull out the scissors from her underwear, and Tsubaki went into defensive mode. Before she could do anything, she felt droplets of rain on her face. It was going to rain, and they both didn't have umbrellas. They ended up taking shelter under a tree. Yurabi had to step closer to him to avoid getting wet from the rain. Their position allowed him to bask in her scent again. He then asked her if she was wearing any perfume, but she denied this. She only remarked that she was sweating because of the heat. She licked her arm and told him that it tasted like the sea. Wanting to know more about her, he asked her if she liked the sea. She answered that she did and that she went there yearly. She then asked him to lick her arm as well, for it might taste like seawater to him. He did as he was told, and he was baffled when he had a vision of her in her swimsuit while enjoying the beach. He realized that their bond may not just involve her drool, but her sweat as well. Why else would he be seeing her thoughts? He then asked her if she wanted to go to the beach with him during summer break. To his utter amazement, she agreed with a smile on her face. He would get to spend the summer break with his first girlfriend. However, things were not going as he expected. During their break, they still did their routine of giving him his portion of her drool every day. But before he could talk to her about going to the beach, she would instantly be on her way home. This kept on happening, and he knew he had to be more assertive. The next time they met for their routine, he grabbed her bike before she could ride off. She reminded her that she agreed to go to the beach with him. However, since she was going to stay with her dad for 3 to 4 days, she told him that they could do it the following week. He was ecstatic to hear this. When it was time for them to go, he was so excited. Even though he was almost late, he still managed to arrive on time. He saw her and instantly apologized for being late. When she turned around, he was shocked to see how tan she had become. Turns out her dad lived by the beach, and she had gotten sunburned from swimming. During the train ride, he couldn't get over how different she looked. The moment he was waiting for had arrived, and he finally got to see Yurabi in a bikini. Even though she was wearing a peru to cover her bottom, even though she looked different because of the tan, he still thought that she was hot. They ate fried noodles before going for a swim. Urabi was a fast swimmer, and he barely kept up with her. She explained that she had been swimming since she was little, so she was quite good at it. He went underwater to get a good look at her, and he thought about how good her figure was. However, he wished she would take off her peru. Urabi caught her looking at something while he was underwater. When he resurfaced, he reasoned that he was only admiring her peru. She explained that the reason she wore it was because she was still at her dad's house. She always had her scissors with her while wearing a bikini. It left an outline on her skin. She took her peru off to show him, and he was incredibly flustered to see her in her bikini bottoms that his nose bled. While on the train, she asked him if he had fun as well, and to make sure, she shoved her finger in his mouth. She then took it out to taste his drool to know his emotions. Her nose bled, so Tsubaki frantically explained that it was probably because of the tan line of the scissors on her skin. Urabi then told him that she could show it to him again the next year they go to the beach. Tsubaki was out shopping for clothes in the city when he unexpectedly met Oka. She then asked if he was shopping for a date. When he did not respond out of embarrassment, she told him that they should get ice cream together. He was uncomfortable about the idea, and he was obviously hesitating. However, she asked him how often it is that they run into a classmate in the city. She grabbed his arm and he was still resisting. Eventually, she lets go, and he decides to follow her. While they were eating their ice cream, he asked her what Yuno would think if they were out together. She laughed at his concern and assured him that she sees him as trustworthy. She told him that Kui, Yuno's first name, had even praised him for being a nice guy. Tsubaki is surprised to learn that Oka and Yuno refer to each other using their first names. In school, Oka told Urabi about her conversation with Tsubaki. She told her that they talk about first names because she and her boyfriend call each other by them sometimes. Oka began watching Urabi in a mischievous way as she talked about how interesting Tsubaki is. She then suddenly shoved her finger in his mouth to taste Urabi's drool. Doing so made her blush like a tomato, so she assumed that Urabi was thinking about Tsubaki calling her by her first name. She continued teasing her until Urabi stood up and left. On their way home, Tsubaki was complaining about the heat again, so he suggested that they cool off in the park. When they got there, he told her that he would get them a drink. When he returned with the 2 sodas at hand, he found her sleeping on the bench. He approached her and tried to wake her up, but it seemed like she was in a deep sleep. He called her name several times, even shaking her shoulders, but to no avail. He then leaned in and called her Mikoto, her first name, for the first time. Like magic, she woke up and looked at him. She was blushing, and she had an adorable smile on her face. He instantly prompted her to drink the soda he'd brought to avoid embarrassment. He wanted to call her Mikoto again when he remembered how her face lit up, but he was too flustered to utter even the first syllable. He ended up blabbering about midsummer cicadas that were singing. Meanwhile, Urabi just sighed in disappointment. The next morning, Tsubaki was determined to get a photo of Urabi after having a dream about it. So when they were together, he asked her to post a photo. She was hesitant at first, but she still agreed. He asked her to smile, but she refused to do so since it was pointless to fake a smile for a photo. He tried to push her, but she walked away instead. On a different day, he was waiting for Urabi to arrive on the bridge so they could go home, but she was running late. Suddenly, a girl's voice called out to him. It was Hayakawa, his previous crush. He was a bit flustered while talking to her, especially when she invited him to have coffee with her so they could catch up. But he declined, explaining that he was waiting for someone. She understood easily enough, so she told him they could do it when he was free. She bid him goodbye while he remained waiting for Urabi. He decided to look if Urabi was waiting for him somewhere else, but when he was shocked to see her crouching by the bridge, she was apparently already there for a while, and she witnessed him talking to Hayakawa. He began explaining that it was not what she had thought, but she walked ahead while he followed her. She remembered that Hayakawa was the girl he had a crush on, so he explained that he turned her offer down. He suddenly asked if she would be angry if he had gotten coffee with Hayakawa. Urabi looked solemn when she had faced him. She then shoved her finger in his mouth and instructed him to lick and suck the saliva off it. When he did, tears began falling down his cheeks. Urabi explained that she would be extremely sad if he chose Hayakawa over her. Her emotions had made him shed tears. He assured her that she is the girl he loves, and that none of that would change. His words made her smile so genuinely that he stared at her tenderly for a moment. He then suddenly realized that he wanted a photo of her smile, so he asked her to hold that expression. She was not impressed by his antics, but she agreed anyway. However, rather than smiling at him, she made a funny face instead. Tsubaki was dismayed at first, but when he looked at the photo, he promised that he would treasure it. He took out his wallet and kept her photo there. Seeing this made her extremely happy that her mouth began producing excessive drool once again. Urabi was so impressive when it came to running that Yajima, one of the members of the track team, tried to recruit her. However, she declined since she was not thinking about joining the track team. Yajima then just made her promise to run in the relay race during field day instead. Tsubaki was so amazed that she could keep up with Yajima, who was a city champion before. She informed him that she was even recruited, she didn't accept it. Turns out she was thinking about how she couldn't go home with him after school if she accepted. He was so touched by her concern that he attempted to hug her. As usual, she was able to dodge it again. Sometime later, Tsubaki became ill for real this time. He had an actual cold, so he stayed home. Oka told Urabi that she did something for Yuno when he was sick and how it somehow made him feel better. After school, Urabi went to Tsubaki's house to visit. He was pretty happy to see her even though he was obviously pretty sick. He said that it reminded him of the time she first visited him before they were going out. He then felt sad that he wouldn't be able to see her run the following day for the field day. She gave him his daily dose of drool, and for some reason, he had a vision of being under the summer sun. He exclaimed that he felt warm all over, and he was suddenly full of energy. He now felt better, and he assumed that it was because of Urabi. She, in turn, was glad that he was fine now. When she got home, she suddenly felt sick. Turns out, she was cold the whole time since she was only wearing her bikini underneath her coat. During the race, Tsubaki was finally feeling better, and he was there to cheer for his girlfriend. He was mesmerized when he saw her legs, and he was not the only one. Some of their guy schoolmates were talking about her legs as well, and he became infuriated by this. Before he could do anything about it, the race had begun. Urabi was the anchor, so it was up to her to finish the relay. Tsubaki, Oka, and the rest of their classmates were cheering for her when it was her turn. They were all amazed by how fast she could run. In the end, she was able to surpass the other teams and won. On their way home, Tsubaki tells her that she has a special gift and that she should join the track team. He proposed a compromise so that they could still spend time together, saying that he would be happy for her. Urabi then gave her saliva-covered finger for him to suck on. Tsubaki began smiling widely, which made her conclude that he was lying about being happy if she joined the track team. She showed him her leg, which had his name tag on it. He was shocked to see it since it was missing from his shoebox earlier. She explained that he only wanted her legs all to himself, and that she'd rather walk with him than be successful at the track. He was so moved that he attempted to hug her again, but she quickly stepped away. She then challenged him to a race that he was bound to lose. Tsubaki was in trouble. He had begun dreaming about touching Urabi's breasts. It was Sunday, and it was all he could think about. Even the meat buns his sister offered for him to eat reminded him of that. He went out to the library of the house to take his mind off things. When he got there, all the magazines he was reading featured women wearing bikinis, so that did not help at all. He decided to take a walk instead. He ended up in the place where he and Urabi usually part ways. He looked at the direction she usually goes and decided to walk that way. He found himself on the side of town he hadn't been in before. He looked up once he was in front of a tall building and wondered if it was where his girlfriend lived. He brushed the thought off since she couldn't possibly live in a building so fancy. Suddenly, Urabi was behind him while riding her bike. Apparently, she was out buying groceries, and the building was in fact where she lived. He reasoned that he was just wandering around and attempted to bid her farewell. She stopped him, however, and invited him to have some tea. They stepped inside the building, and he found out that she lived on the 10th floor. Her parents were also not around, so they were completely alone. She left him in her room so she can prepare the tea. He took the opportunity to look around, and even buried his face on her bed, which smelled divine to him. When she caught him doing that, he instantly spouted the lame excuse that he was thinking about how the bed was great for her back. It suddenly began raining, and the sky became really dark. Robbie got up to turn on the light, but a sudden thunder and lightning caused her to trip and fall. He caught her and asked her if she was not hurt. He then noticed that his hand was directly under her breast. He realized that this was his chance. He slowly crept his hand to feel them, but she instantly took notice. She got up quickly, and in seconds she was pointing her scissors directly at his face. She became increasingly certain that he had something in his mind, so he was forced to confess the dream he had and how her breast felt in his dream. She then regarded him for a moment before putting her hands under her shirt and touching her own breasts. Then she covered her finger with her saliva and made him lick it. That way, he was able to feel what her actual breast felt like. Experiencing this made him shed tears for reasons he didn't even comprehend. She took pity on him and invited him to actually feel her breasts, if he wanted. He hesitated and began saying that they should consider their mutual feelings and not get carried away. She counted up to 3, and if the time was up, he would lose his chance. When she reached 3, his hand shot out to touch her breast. He was flustered, and he was incredulous that he was actually feeling it. He was even feeling her heartbeat. He got carried away and he pushed her to the ground. She was startled, especially when he began licking her ear. Tears started flowing from her eyes, and when Tsubaki was about to kiss her on her lips, he saw her crying. He was instantly guilty and apologized to her before rushing out, even though it was raining. At school, after finishing their meal, Yurabi gave Oka her finger with her saliva on it. When Oka tasted it, she instantly felt that her body was hot and her cheeks were on fire. She immediately concluded that Yurabi and Tsubaki had done something recently. Yurabi confessed that they did something, and she felt weird about it. She wasn't used to feeling it. Oka explained that it was normal for her to feel these things when you were in love. Yurabi was so embarrassed that she abruptly thanked Oka for the food and sprinted away. Meanwhile, Tsubaki was still feeling bad for what he did. He thought that he failed as a man for what he had did to his girlfriend. He bowed down low in front of Yurabi when they had met up, making her cry. Yurabi told him that she was not angry, merely urging him that they should go home. When she was about to give him his drool, he stopped her by saying that he didn't have the right unless she hit him first. She warned him that her slap would be painful, but he was determined. She slapped him hard and he didn't avoid it. She then told him to touch her ear, so he did. When he pressed harder, tears started flowing down her cheeks. She told him that he changed her body. He began apologizing, but she told him that she liked the feeling. She then stated that she was responsible for what happened as well, since she allowed him to touch her breast. She shoved her finger in his mouth and tasted his drool. A bruise similar to Tsubaki's appeared on her cheeks and she wants to share his pain. He cradled her injured face and told her that she shouldn't have done that, since he never wanted to see a bruise on the face of the woman he loved so much. Yurabi bowed down in embarrassment while offering her drool-covered finger to him. He took it in his mouth, and as soon as he was finished, the flustered Yurabi sprinted away. Yurabi went to school with the most ridiculous bedhead. Tsubaki thought that she should care for her hair since he was pretty cured. Oka noticed her messy hair and offered to tidy it up for her. She took her away from the classroom and gave her a new hairstyle. She tied her hair up into pigtails, and her whole face was suddenly visible for all to see. When she got back, everyone was amazed by her transformation. Not that her bangs were not covering her whole face. When they were having PE class, the guys were running laps, but most of them were focusing on the girls who were playing volleyball. They were giving particular attention to Yurabi, praising her for her looks. Tsubaki was infuriated by their comments. So much so that he ran as fast as he could to get ahead of them. On their way home, he asked her if she was still going to wear the same hairstyle tomorrow. She answered that she would if Oka decided to do it again. He then cautiously asked her if she could maybe go back to her old hairstyle. He thought that it wasn't fair that others got to see her face so openly when he rarely even did. She asked him why, but he failed to give an answer. She removed the hair ties and she asked for his hands. He was confused, but let her take them. She placed them on her head and asked if he messed her up. She instructed him to mess it up hard until her hair goes back to normal. She then told him that she would not change her hairstyle again if that was what he wanted. He concluded that her cutest hairstyle was the normal one. The next day, Oka excitedly told her that they should make another hairstyle for her. However, Yurabi turned down the idea. Even though Oka tried to convince her, she was set on her decision. Oka then assumed that she was refusing because Tsubaki asked her to. She figured that it was because he was possessive of Yurabi. Some days later, one of their classmates revealed different pictures of Yurabi when she changed her hairstyle. He was selling her photos for 300 yen. Tsubaki was fuming with anger as he watched this guy classmate gush over the photos of his girlfriend. He was so angry that he crushed the soda he was holding. His classmates did not know that Yurabi was his. However, he became curious when the boys started talking about how she looked like the popular idol, Momoka Imai. He wanted to know if this was really the case. So when he and Yurabi parted for the day, he went to the bookstore to buy the idol's photo book, and the rumors were true. She really did look like Yurabi. He bought it immediately and was about to leave when Yuno saw him there. He quickly escaped before he could question him though. Later that night, he looked at the photos and was so amazed by the uncanny resemblance. He thought that it was a good idea to buy it. When he and Yurabi were together, Tsubaki bid her farewell right after he received his daily drool. Before he could leave though, Yurabi stopped him. She asked him if he had bought the Momokai Imai's album. He was shocked that she knew about that. It turns out Yuno told Oka, which then told Yurabi. He was fuming that he did not silence Yuno about it. He told her that he only liked the idol because she looked like her. Yurabi asked to see the photos, so she ordered him to get them as she waited in the park. When he returned, he was eagerly showing how similar they were to each other. She questioned him about his favorite photo of the bunch. He scanned through the album and enthusiastically showed her the picture of the idol smiling brightly. All of a sudden, she took out her scissors and cut the album into pieces. She then reminded him that he was her boyfriend, so he didn't get to like idols that look like her. He realized that it was not only him, but she also got jealous. Tsubaki was off buying another album of Momokai Amai. He knew that he had to be careful around Yurabi since she might cut it up again. Why couldn't she understand that he only liked the idol because she reminded him of her? When he exited the store, he ran into someone with short hair. It was Hayakawa. They ended up walking together. He engaged him in a conversation about their old classmates. He mentioned that Yuno had a girlfriend, so she asked if he had one as well. After a moment, he denied that he had one. She then told him that she knew that he was always looking at her during junior high. She knew that he liked her all those 3 years. She told him that her boyfriend recently broke up with her, and then she confessed that hearing about how he liked her back then felt nice. She apologized about this, but he told her that if hearing about his crush on her will help her gain her self-confidence back, he will talk about it more. He then recalled how he took a strand of her hair home and placed it in a plastic capsule and then tried to sniff it. He stopped and asked her if she thought that was creepy. She assured him that it was not, since she also brought a mug from the boy she liked home as well. He told her not to let the breakup bring her down, and continued praising her for being a wonderful girl. She thanked him sincerely, but she began crying. He didn't know what to do since he realized how bad the breakup must have been. When she looked up again, he noticed how cute she was, and how some drool had escaped her mouth. He began thinking about tasting another girl's drool. She asked if they can continue seeing each other to chat sometimes. He allowed his impulse to take over and told her that if only she let him taste her drool. He realized what he had just said and desperately tried to take it back. But to his surprise, she agreed. She took her drool-covered finger out of her mouth and offered it up to him. He was tempted to taste it, but the image of Yurabi telling him that the drool was their bond made him stop. He bowed down to Hayakawa and apologized that she had to go this far. Observing his behavior, she accurately guessed that he did, in fact, have a girlfriend. She learned that he tasted his girlfriend's drool and that it was so sweet. She challenged him that her drool might end up sweeter, but still, Tsubaki refused to give in. She asked him what his girlfriend's name was, and when she learned it, she bid him farewell. Later on, Yurabi was walking when someone approached her. It was Hayakawa, and she enthusiastically introduced herself to her. Yurabi told her that she already knew who she was. Hayakawa was shocked that she also knew about how Tsubaki felt about her. Yurabi directly asked her what she wanted, and so Hayakawa took out a pamphlet and gave it to her. She explained that it was a cultural festival in their school and that she wanted her to attend. She even mentioned that Tsubaki would be there. One night, Hayakawa called Tsubaki late at night to meet him. He rushed out of his house to see her alone by the phone booth. He got worried when he saw that she had a bruise on her cheek. She told him that it was from her boyfriend who wanted to get her back. He was so angry about the way she was treated. Hayakawa then asked him to go to the cultural festival on Sunday to pretend to be her boyfriend so her ex would leave her alone. He didn't want to do it because of his girlfriend, but she told him that she didn't have anyone else. So he agreed to be her boyfriend for a day. Before returning home, she wiped the bruise off her cheek with a wet cloth. It turns out that the bruise was just makeup. During their daily routine, Yurabi asked him what he was doing on Sunday. He told her that he would be shopping with Yuno. Yurabi obviously began to have some suspicions. Her hunch was kind of confirmed when Oka told her that Yuno was going with her to the cultural festival, which means that he was definitely not with Tsubaki on Sunday. On the day of the cultural festival, Tsubaki was feeling guilty about what he was about to do. He looked around and saw that everyone was wearing costumes. He was surprised when he saw that Hayakawa was dressed as her junior high self. Tsubaki and Hayakawa were walking around. He noticed how she was clinging to him. He told her that she didn't have to hold his arm like that, but she insisted, saying that it was so her ex would see them having a close relationship. Unbeknownst to him, Oino and Oka were also there. Oka was pretending to be a maid in a maid cafe, which made Oino flustered. He became annoyed when some guys approached Oka and asked for a photo, so he stepped out of the cafe. Oka thought about how her boyfriend acts like that when guys talk to her. She happened to look out the window facing the opposite building and saw Tsubaki with another girl. Hayakawa brought Tsubaki to an abandoned classroom while Oka trailed behind them. She heard them talking about their time together in junior high. Hayakawa made him remember a time when he wanted to hug her while they were watching the sunset. She told him that he can hug her at that moment. He told her that he couldn't because he had a girlfriend. She asked him if his feelings for her had faded, but he did not answer. She took off her wig and told him that she couldn't accept that. She made him touch her hair and told him that she would grow it out if he became her boyfriend. He reminded her again that he was already in a relationship, but she wouldn't give up. She insisted that he taste her drool as well before deciding between her and Arabe. She held her drool-covered finger out to him, and he was having difficulties rejecting her. Oka was about to interfere when a person in a robot costume stopped her. It was Urabe. She entered the room and declared that Hayakawa was right. Tsubaki was so startled that his girlfriend was there, but she merely continued that she agreed that they should let Tsubaki decide. She proposed that Hayakawa and her would play rock, paper, scissors while he was blindfolded. Whoever wins would let him taste their drool and he had to guess it. They agreed to do it and Yurabe won. She covered her finger with saliva and let him suck on it. His nose began bleeding and he instantly knew that it was Arabe. She then used her scissors to cut her way out of the robot costume to reveal that she was completely naked. She explained the intensity of the bond that they had with each other. Hayakawa, however, was still defiant. She took her own clothes as well and demanded that Tsubaki taste her drool too. He was hesitant and he even asked Yurabe if she was fine with it. She gave him her approval, so he was about to suck on Hayakawa's finger, but she started crying. Yurabe explained that those were tears of rejection, that she wouldn't be crying if she truly loved Tsubaki. They learned that Hayakawa never had anything but unrequited love herself. She began crying harder while crouching on the ground as she explained that the person she liked always liked someone else. He dropped to his knees and tried to comfort her with kind words, but Yurabe stopped him. She helped her stand up and instructed her to open her mouth. Hayakawa did as she was told, and Yurabe shoved her fingers into her mouth. She tasted her drool and exclaimed that it was incredibly sweet. He assured her that she would find someone that would return her feelings someday. Meanwhile, Tsubaki returned to his upright position and began moving around as he imagined tasting Hayakawa's drool. His blindfold fell off and he was able to see the two of them naked. Oka entered the room to grab the attention of the other girls that the red-faced Tsubaki already saw them. He received 2 powerful slaps from the girls, but he dropped to the ground with a smile on his face. Ever since the event of the cultural festival, all Tsubaki could think about whenever he was looking at Yurabe was seeing her naked. It just kept on running in his mind. After she gave him the usual amount of drool, she asked to have some of his as well. He frantically refused, saying that he was not feeling well. She distracted him by pointing at something in the distance and shoved a finger in his mouth. She tasted it even though he was trying to stop her. She blushed and her body became hot all over. She asked him why he was feeling like that, but he sprinted away from her, begging her not to ask him why. His problem persisted, and every time he looked at her, it was as if he could see through her clothes. When they were going home again, she gave him the usual, but when he was finished sucking her finger, he suddenly felt dizzy. When his gaze dropped on her, all he could see was her naked body. He couldn't take it anymore, so he hugged her. She squirmed out of his arms and drew out her scissors. He quickly held out his handkerchief and it was in pieces in seconds. He apologized to her, but she noticed that his forehead had a small wound that was bleeding. She was shaken and begged for his forgiveness over and over. He tried to tell her it was okay and that it was just a scratch, but she insisted that they go to her place to treat it. They went to her house and she disinfected his wound. She apologized sincerely and explained that she usually doesn't miss what she was aiming for. He was totally fine with it, but mentioned that it wasn't like her to miss. She told him that it was probably because of a dream she had last night. He asked her what it was about, but rather than answering, she gave her drool-covered finger for him to suck on. However, the same thing happened to him. He started seeing her completely naked. He panicked, knowing that he might hug her again. He told her that he would go home, but she stopped him since she wasn't done treating his wound. In his desperation to get away, he accidentally pushed her too hard and she was thrown to the bed. He instantly regretted doing what he did, so he stepped closer to apologize. Unfortunately, he stepped on the medical kit and tripped. He was about to land on top of her, but he knew that it would anger her. So using his foot, he changed the direction of his fall and ended up banging his head against the bed frame. Urabe was quick to check if he was okay while he explained why he did that. She approached him and hugged him, telling him that she'd rather he hug her than get hurt. Next day, Tsubaki saw that Yuno also had a forehead injury. Apparently, Oka wanted to cut his bangs using scissors, but she wasn't very good at it. He brought some gauze with him as well, but it was in pieces because Oka also wanted to cut the gauze herself. Tsubaki figured that Oka was trying to copy Urabe. A girl, Sawano, suddenly approached him, telling him that their teacher wanted to see him because the two of them were supposed to give it out. She noticed that the gauze on his forehead was falling off, so she ripped it off and replaced it with a band-aid. He was horrified that she removed the gauze that Urabe placed on him. He later asked for it back, so he can put it on top of the band-aid. When Urabe saw him again when it was time to go home, she saw that he was wearing the gauze again. She was visibly touched that he wanted to keep it on him for as long as he could. When they did their usual routine, he was about to hug her. However, it was she who leaned in close so she could hug him. Upon realizing that he had his arms around her, he panicked and stepped away immediately. She explained that it was she who wanted the hug. While Tsubaki's sister was out shopping, Urabe saw her. She decided to introduce herself again, and Yuko Tsubaki remembered her as the one who always brought notes for her brother. When Urabe was about to go on her way, Yuko invited her to go with her. She brought her to a cafe and let her order coffee. She grabbed Yurabe's uniform to see if it still felt the same. And even though she is startled, Yurabe lets her. Yuko explained that she went to the same high school as Tsubaki. She then asked her if she knew anything about who her brother was dating. Yurabe blushed and denied that she knew anything. Yuko told her about the person she liked back in high school that she ended up dating for a while. She suddenly giggled about what happened the day before when Tsubaki caught her sleeping and pointed out that she was drooling. Out of nowhere, he asked her if she had a boyfriend. She thought that it was such a strange question, but she remembered when her boyfriend snapped a photo of her drooling in her sleep. He told her that she was cute. Yurabe became curious and asked her what had happened between her and her high school boyfriend. She explained that he went to university and just drifted apart. Until then, she still wondered if he still had that photo of her. Yuko asked her if she had someone she liked, and she answered that she did. Tsubaki's sister exclaimed that it would be nice to be her age again. They bid each other farewell after their chat, and Yuko promised that she'll remember her name. Tsubaki, Yuko, and their dad visited their mom's grave one peaceful day. They cleaned her headstone and laid out her favorite cherry mochi. The three of them prayed before they left. While they were walking, Yuko talked about how she had given a report to their mother about Tsubaki. She claimed that she would raise him right until he gets a job like their mother would. Tsubaki was bewildered by this, claiming that she didn't have to wait that long to get ready. Her father even added that he and Tsubaki could take care of themselves. Yuko answered indignantly that they couldn't even cook other than microwave meals. Yurabe and Tsubaki were walking home when Yurabe told him that she ran into his sister last Saturday. He was shocked and asked her what they talked about. She told him that it was about the boyfriend she had when she was in high school. When he asked if they were still together, she replied that they drifted apart after high school. Yurabe then asked him about the cherry mochi his sister gave her. He explained that it was because their mother loved cherry mochi. They visited her grave with his family. She listened to him talk about how he didn't remember his mom much since he was young when she passed away. She then told him that she wanted to visit his mom's grave with him. He agreed, so they met up at a station on Sunday. When he saw her, he was taken aback. She brought flowers, some offerings, and most especially, she was wearing a fancy dress. He doesn't understand why she was dressed that way. When they got there, she placed her offerings and flowers by the grave. She even offered a prayer for his mother. When she stood up, she explained that she wore that dress because she wanted to look good when meeting his mom. Yurabe later on asked what kind of person his mother was, but he doesn't remember anything about her. He didn't even remember how it felt when she passed away. She instructed him to touch the grave with his left arm, and they would exchange saliva with each other. Even though he didn't understand what was happening, he did as he was told. For Tsubaki, the whole thing felt so good. Experiencing that was entirely new for him. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Yurabe was crying. He asked her why, and she replied that even though he couldn't remember, he was crying hard during his mother's funeral. She was shedding the tears he cried during that day. Yurabe comments that despite this, he smiles more than he cries, and that's because of his family. She revealed that she wanted to be a person like that to him as well. Tears began flowing harder on Tsubaki's cheeks, yet he smiled at her tenderly. His heart swelled upon hearing the heartfelt words of his mysterious girlfriend.